Well, good day and welcome to SOP, Save Our Planet. My name is Gary Willing. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. I'm also encouraging everyone to look into this information for yourself and see if it's true for you. If you go to the Share International site, there is a link in the description portion of these videos that will take you to that website. At that website, you get the best background information about Maitreya, about his priorities, about the many miracle signs. So hopefully you'll look into this information a little bit more, read more about it, check out some of the images on that site. Share International, link is in the description, so check it out. It's also free too, by the way. The second thing I'm hoping that you do is join the discussion. If you have a question you want to ask me, post your question in the comments section. I'll try to answer it in the next video. Or you can email me, searchforsigns@mail.com, or you can simply let me know what you think by posting a comment. I appreciate it when you guys all do that kind of stuff, so thank you very much. I did have a couple questions, but they're also more comments than questions. But I'm gonna extract the question part out of it because there are actually question marks in both of these comments. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is this person is commenting about an article I read from Ben's Master entitled "The Perennial Light of Truth," and it's about Helena Blavatsky, and it's about the truth that she was sharing with the world about the Masters. But this person put in there, he said, or she said, "But would it be true as the truth cannot be spoken? That means, and skillful too are life-given lessons." Well, of course, there's truth to what you're saying, of course. The lessons that we learn from life are the most rewarding. And the most useful lessons and the most memorable lessons that we learn are when we fail, of course. So it's more important to fail and get back up again than it is to never fail, of course. I mean, just ask Thomas Edison. How many times did he fail in inventing a light bulb before he invented a light bulb, right? Now, the point that I wanted to make about this part of your question/comment was when I talk about Maitreya not giving his name out, but yet speaking to the world, right? People always say, why doesn't he just say his name? What's the point of that? It makes no sense to them, right? And then I say, well, he doesn't want to infringe on their free will. And they go, what's that matter, right? Or they'll say something to the effect of, why don't these masters just come out and tell us who they are and that they're here and that we need to change and so forth? And I say, well, they don't do that because they don't want to infringe on our free will. And then I get variably the same response. You know, it's like, why would they not tell us? That doesn't make any sense. Infringe on your free will, what is that? Well, it goes along with the lines of what you're saying. The most useful teachers are when we fail and we have to get back up and relearn it. You know what I mean? And so when you infringe upon somebody's free will and trying to teach them in the way that these masters will be teaching humanity, you actually deny them the greatest lesson, which is to fail. So it's important for us to fail. It's important for us to be honest with ourselves and fail in that kind of way. And so they don't step in our way in that way. Now they'll still teach us and guide us. And if we ask them, they'll give us any information that we want. We just have to ask. But that's the main reason why that they don't tell us who they are. That's the reason why Maitreya is not saying his name now. And then when the time is right, he will say his name. But that time hasn't come yet. And it's important for us to listen to what he has to say and say, I like what he has to say, or I agree with what he's saying. Or I don't like what he has to say, and I don't agree with what he has to say. And it's important for us to be honest with ourselves. So hopefully that adds a little insight into that. Now, of course, what you're saying is true, that the truth cannot be spoken, of course. And when Maitreya talks about self-realization, he would say the same thing. You can't really talk about the self. I mean, you can, but you're really just hinting at it. So when Maitreya says the only way to really realize the self is to practice honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment, if you don't do anything with any of those, with that, those are just words. They mean nothing. It's the same thing with the truths in the Bible. If you don't apply them to yourself, they're just words. They don't do anything for you. And you can't simply just believe it and think that it's true and profess your belief to everybody and bang them over the head when they don't believe what you believe, and that's the way to go around living. It's better to look at the truths within the Bible and apply them to your life. That's the most important thing. To love one another as thyself, which is what Paul was talking about. He said, owe no man anything but to love them as yourself. Because when you do, you fulfilled the law. There is no law that you have to believe in Jesus as the only true Son of God. There's no truth to that. The truth is what Jesus was talking about, what Jesus was trying to get us to do, which is to love one another. But, so the truth can't really be spoken. And anytime you put a moral framework and you encapsulate some ideas and you claim that to be the truth, that's not the truth. You're right. Now, what this master was talking about in this article, the perennial light of truth, I don't know if you listened to this video or if you just read the title and commented, which happens quite a bit, by the way. I can tell by the way people comment that they didn't really listen to what I had to say or what was in the video. But go back and listen to it, and you'll understand, I guess, a little bit better if you didn't. But he was talking about Helena Blavatsky, who lived in the 19th century, and she was a Russian woman who I believe was approached by one of these masters in Russia and was encouraged to go seek them out in the Himalayas. Now, keep in mind, this was, the 1860s, maybe 1870s, I guess. I don't know. And for a woman to travel by herself and to go from, a really large country like Russia to the Himalayas was unheard of. But she literally had no fear. And she did. She sought him out. She got on a train and took her way all the way to the Himalayas to try to seek him out. And the first time she failed. She didn't find him. Had to go back, regroup, and then she eventually made a second trip. And that second trip, she actually did find him. How she did, I don't know, but she found him. And then she saw that they were real. She saw them as just as physical as you would be, because they are on the physical plane. And they've been living away from humanity, totally forgotten about by humanity. But she's, like I said, when she sought them out, she found the reality and the truth of them. And then she lived with them for quite some time, I think a few years, and really gained insight into their wisdom and their teachings and got to know them, of course. And when she had to go back, she promised them that she would let everybody know who they were, as much as she could, as far and wide as she could. And she fulfilled upon her promise. And in so doing, got a tremendous amount of backlash. And even to this day, and this is what this master was talking about, even to this day, very few people look at her in a favorable light. They all talk about her being this fraud. But she was speaking this wonderful truth to humanity. And it's kind of on par with people such as herself, like Jesus. When he spoke the truth that he did, he got a tremendous amount of backlash. Of course, they put him to death, right? And thankfully, they didn't crucify her in the way that they did back then, but it wasn't quite as acceptable to do that to people. They'll just put you to death and crucify you verbally. They'll just criticize you the whole time, right? But she, again, had no fear, and she persevered through great physical illness and all sorts of stuff to get this information about the masters, this information that had been forgotten about for millennia, and give it to the truth about that to humanity. It was extraordinary. But the truth about the masters, and this is something that's important to kind of keep in mind, even when I'm talking about it. But when you read Alice Bailey, or you read Benjamin Creme, or you read the Helena Blavatsky books, when they're talking about the masters, yes, it is about the physical, nature of these masters, that they are real in physical form. When it comes to Benjamin Creme, it's also important to keep in mind that they are actually, some of them are actually in the world now, and that Maitreya is actually speaking to humanity. It's important to keep that in mind. But I think just as important, or maybe even more important than that, the truth about the masters is the truth about your own self and why you're here and why you are going through the problems that you're going through in your life, because they are us in potential. They are our destiny. Our birthright is to become just as divine as they are. That is the wonderful news about what she was really sharing with people. And we threw it back in her face, just as we did with Jesus, just as we did with the Buddha, just as we did with so many other people throughout history that in their own way were giving that same truth to humanity, right? But anyway, that's what the perennial light of truth was. So she was an extraordinary woman, and I think will be looked at differently when we know who these masters are, but up until now, not looked on very favorably. But that's what he was talking about as the perennial light of truth. So, but thank you very much for the comment. And like I said, I always encourage comments, so thank you. All right, this next person. He's talking about MTG. And if you don't know who MTG is, Marjorie Taylor Greene, bless your heart, because you have been spared years upon years of pain and suffering of listening to this woman talk. But what did this person say? Because I think I've actually kind of shaken a hornet's nest when I gave her just a little bit of praise. Even if MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is now making nominal sin claims as a part of her image, rehabilitation mea culpa tour. I love that. That's funny. She's still nuts, and there's no real benefit to welcoming her with open arms. Trump screwed her, so she turned on him. Fine, right? See, that's the question. There is a question in there, so that's what we're going to talk about. So what I've seen, and I don't know, I doubt you listened to these other videos, or if you're listening to this and you're not the person who posted that comment, you might not have heard me what I've said about her, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is a congresswoman in Georgia, not too far from where I live, who has made some really outlandish, toxic, critical, false claims throughout the last few years, and has really added to the toxicity of this country in a great way, right? Really added to the divisiveness and the divisions in this way, especially politically. And was totally, utterly convinced that everything that she was saying was right, and everything that everybody else said that was on the other side was totally wrong, and they were evil. And she had no problem telling everybody about that. She fought everybody in every way possible for quite a bit of amount of time. And like you said, Trump screwed her. She wanted to run for governor, and she also wanted to run for the Senate here in Georgia, and he didn't want to support her because he didn't think she would win. Was that it? Maybe. I'm sure that didn't help. I mean, sure that didn't hurt. I'm sure that was probably a part of it. But she really did put Trump up on this pedestal as this wonderful statesman that was going to save not only the country, but the entire world. She saw him as a savior figure, really. And this wonderful Christian with Christian values that will be putting in place legislation that would support Christian values. She also, and I think this is a bigger part of it, thought that he would fulfill upon his promise of releasing the Epstein files. Probably thought that he was totally innocent and had nothing to do with it. Although there's all these photos of him, standing right next to Jeffrey Epstein, right? So he clearly knew something. And then also, when he made the claim that he would never do any regime changes in any countries and he would create peace, she probably believed it because she was really devoted to the man. And he's kind of gone against that. I think that's probably more a part of it, actually. And to her credit, she's kind of awakening up to the fact that this guy is who he is and not perhaps who she thought he was. Or she was. Who she thought he was, excuse me. So I think she's having a moment of clarity. I've brought this up before. Just as alcoholics, right before they go into recovery, they talk about their moment of clarity. Whether it's they've lost their job, they lost their wife, they lost their house, and then they're like, oh, I can't drink anymore. I got to do something. And then they seek out help. Or they get drunk one night, wrap their car around a tree, and as they're in the hospital bed, they have a moment of clarity, and whatever it is, right? She's had a moment of clarity. And the other point of why I brought her up, and of course I am getting a lot of backlash about this, which is fine, right? I can yell it, is the fact that it was totally unexpected. I never in a million years expected her to be the one that was really out there railroading her career, right, to speak against Trump, for one thing, speak out against her beloved Republican Party, another, but also talk about a group of people. She's talked about the Palestinians and the genocide and how awful it is and how we shouldn't fund Israel in that way because they're committing this genocide. And she talked about it, right? She's one of the few political leaders in Washington talking about the genocide in Israel. And she's the crazy one on the right. And that was it's so unexpected. Because she, like so many people, on the left and the right, I guess, but more on the right, have no interest in showing any concern towards somebody else that's different than them. It's really easy to love someone and be concerned about somebody that's just like you. But it is a lot harder to love somebody. And I'm not saying she's totally loves them, but she's definitely, her heart is opening up to them. And the Palestinians are poor. They provide her no financial benefit to have concern about them. They worship a different God. They have darker colored skin. They speak a different language, and they're not American. And for her to show them this nominal concern to them is, like I said, very unexpected. But also, and this is, I think, more important than just her, is I'm starting to hear about it, and you probably maybe have too, from other people on the right. They don't want any more war. That's what they say, right? And I talked about a conversation I had with my brother, who is very much on the right, who is very much on board with the war in Iraq, never once spoke about peace. Every time I spoke about peace, he always went the other way with it. Brought it up himself. I didn't even bring it up. And he goes, I don't want any more war. I don't want it. He talked about the old neocons that he used to praise all the time and said, I don't like them anymore. I don't agree with them. And I can't believe, he even said it. He goes, I can't believe I actually, thought that they were good for the world and the country. Not the world. He didn't care about the world. He only cared about the United States. So, I didn't even think that, but they were the worst thing for the United States, right? But he goes, I don't want any more war. Now, his intention, just like I'm sure Marjorie Taylor Greene and these others on the right, their intention and their belief in how we'll bring about peace is totally off base. And the only reason why I'm able to say that is because the way that they're speaking about getting peace is the same way that we've tried to do it before and it's failed. Okay, so there's historical precedent to it not working. Okay, because everything is that we've tried to bring about peace and security has failed. Everything we tried to bring about justice and trust amongst nations has failed, except the time that we tried the principle of sharing with the Marshall Plan. That's it. And Maitreya says without sharing, there can be no justice. Without justice, there can be no peace. So these people are already on board with peace. The other thing that I'm bringing it up, and the reason why I'm bringing it up, is because Ben's master, Benjamin Creme, and Maitreya for years upon years has spoken the truth about the hearts of humanity. Maitreya says within the hearts of all of humanity is the longing for peace. My brother is an example of that truth that Maitreya spoke. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, and you're right, she's crazy. She probably think I was crazy too, so I can't really, I'm kind of standing on shaky ground with this by saying that she's crazy. I'm sure you guys think I'm crazy too, but, is longing for peace, is saying she wants peace, no more war. Right? It's the exact same thing that Maitreya is saying. They don't know how to get there. Like I said, their motive for wanting peace is totally different than what Maitreya's motive is. But that doesn't matter. They're speaking the truth. They want peace. This is a wonderful, wonderful development. And like I said, totally unexpected. So that's why I brought her up. It's not so much about her, it's about the people that she represents, to be honest. One person's not enough. But for her to be as vocal as she's been over the last 6 months about the genocide in Israel and not to fund Israel in that way and all that kind of stuff, it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful, And I said it's coming from a spokeswoman who I never thought would be the spokeswoman for peace, But if you talk to people in your life who have been a part of the group that supports the neocons, right? Wanted war, thought war was necessary and all that kind of stuff. If you circle back around and talk to them, you might be surprised what you hear now. Now, there are those who still want war because we are in a divided world. It's the sword of cleavage. We have to have this division. That's important to think about too and to remember. The sword of cleavage that Jesus said, was speaking about when he said, I come to bring, not to bring peace, but to bring a sword, to set father against son, mother against daughter, brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. That sword that he was talking about is the love nature of God, the love nature that's flowing through the Christ in tremendous potency, that's bringing to the surface who and what we all are. And it's absolutely essential that we go through this experience of the sword of cleavage for us to make the decision and the choice. See, you might not be aware of it, but we who are alive today will be looked at in the future as the generation of choice. The generation that made the right choice to give the future for all future generations. It's a sucky deal, but we are the ones that are going to have to make the decision. Do we continue on the way that we're doing and end all life on planet Earth forever? Or simply try the principle of sharing, bring about justice, bring about peace, and give us a future? You know, these same people who are starting to talk about peace are going to be the same people that are going to want to see justice. I guarantee you. As unexpected as it is, and that seems unrealistic to think about, it was unrealistic to think about, and this is my point too, it was unrealistic to think about someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene wanting peace and being concerned about another group of people that are different than her. Those same people that she represents are going to be some of the same people that want to see justice in the world, that will eventually cry for sharing. Just saying. I love you guys. Thank you very much for the comments and the questions, and I look forward to talking to you guys again in the very near future. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.